Welcome to So Very Easy. My name is Laura, and today let's change a sleeve pattern. Without actually cutting the original pattern, we can still change it. Let's make a long sleeve into a short sleeve, put a little cuff on it so we have no hand sewing. And we're going to keep the original pattern original. The fabric I'm going to use for the shirt is this really fun flamingo fabric. And I'm going to have some accent pieces showing with this red. This will be a really fun shirt to wear in the summer with a nice pair of red capris. I'm going to be using a pattern I've used for a long time, which is a McCall's 8053. The pattern is a very basic men's looking shirt. So any pattern that sort of has this design is going to work for this. It has a long sleeve and a short sleeve variation. And in this case, this one also has a non-sleeve. I like the idea of turning this fabric into a little tied up shirt. But for me, those sleeves are a little bit too long and the short sleeves are a little too short. So I want to make these sleeves a little bit shorter and have a built-in cuff. And I want to do it without having to cut up my pattern. So I've roughly cut out the sleeve pattern and I have that short sleeve and the long sleeve, and this would have the cuff on. I want a sleeve that's going to come about 13 inches from my shoulder point. So I need to extend this hem down lower. I'm going to use just a little strip of tissue paper, and this tissue paper is what you're going to use just to wrap your gifts with. And because I can see through it, it's going to work out great. I want to lay this paper right over top of that short hem, and I'm going to trace that hem with all of the markings, even this grain line. And one more marking will be the center. From here, I need to add a seam allowance. The most common seam allowances is a 5/8. And some tape measures are actually 5/8 of a thickness. You can always test them by laying them on the pattern. So you can measure and mark it a 5/8 or use the edge of the ruler as a guide. If you have a seam guide, this will work well too. The one I'm going to be using is from Clover. It's a little bit larger than most seam guides. It has a little area that you can push and use an adjustment. There's a little area here you can do circles. And my favorite feature is this little hole. And a nice sharp pencil lead will fit inside. So from this edge to the hole, I can set it at 5/8. And I'm going to use that to draw with. Just have this edge following the line and just run my pencil all the way along the edge. So it's a quick and easy way to mark any seam of any size. I'm going to measure from my seam allowance to my top mark to the measurement that I want. I'm going to make sure my grain line is straight. I'm not going to worry about any of the sides yet. I'm going to pin this paper piece on a little bit above this seam allowance. Now I can take this and fold it back. So there will be no cutting, just folding. And I'm not worried about any of the measurements. I just want to fold it up and out of the way. I want to make sure it stays clear of any of my seam allowances. So I can just fold all of the pieces into the center so nothing is in the way of cutting. And a couple of pins to hold that back and out of the way. And the flathead pins work well. From here, I can fix those side seams so that they blend in. Fold that back, put a piece of tissue paper here, and redraw those side seams. And include all of the markings. I do not want to change anything up here because this is already going to fit into the pattern. So I can move this sort of on a pivot system until it gets to an area that I'm going to be able to redraw. Once you have the one side drafted, just use it as a guide and do a duplicate for the other side. And that way both sides will be the same. And pin those in place. If you see any of the original pattern lines underneath, you can pin those out of the way. So I'm going to fold this original pattern even further underneath. Sometimes just a reposition of a pin is all you're going to need. So now I have a pattern that I can cut without cutting the original. If you find this is a little bit wider than what you'd like, you can make it a little bit shorter without cutting the pattern. I want to put a folded dart into this pattern, and I'm going to use that center line. I want to make my fold equal on both sides. The top here is the center, and when I get the measurement I want, I'm going to be able to just fold this to one side and repin. What's really important is that you don't change any of this top. It can come in and it can come out a little bit, but the measurement from point to point needs to remain the same so it fits into your original pattern. I now have a really nice sleeve pattern that's been custom made for the design that I want. And on the bottom of my sleeve, I want this little red fabric as a cuff. Take another strip of tissue paper and lay it over top. And draw those outside measurements along with that seam allowance. I have the shape, now I'm going to be able to add the size. How big do you want that cuff? I want my cuff to be a small 2-inch cuff. I'm going to use this guide again. I'm going to have that hole at that 2-inch mark, and I'm going to measure 2 inches up from my seam allowance and add the seam allowance. I now have my seam allowance to attach it onto the shirt, the cuff size, and another seam allowance. For each sleeve, we need to cut 2 of these. With the right sides together and the interfacing on the one side, I want to sew the top part of the curve, not the hem, coming on and off each side. With that top sewn together, I want to grade the seams. And what grading means is you're going to have one seam very small, the next seam a little bit bigger, so it looks like steps. And then while this is still flat and easy to work with, press so that edge is right along the top. Once it's pressed, we're going to take these 2 sides and sew them together. We're going to be able to open them up, match up those 2 edges, and stitch this together. You can trim off a little bit of that seam allowance because you don't need it that big. And open that seam so it's going to lie flat, and then just fold that back together so those 2 seams are going to match. This is going to be the cuff of that sleeve. All of the original pattern pieces are tucked inside. I can cut this out. If you're wanting to use this pattern piece again, make yourself a copy and keep it right with the pattern. And then once you're done with it, you're going to be able to remove all of your pins from the back and the front. The tissue paper is going to come off, and when you open up that pattern, you still have the original pattern piece. When the shoulder is on, you'll be able to put that sleeve in and then stitch that side seam up, going all the way to the end of the hem. We'll be able to put this cuff on now. Match the seam up of the cuff to the seam of the underarm and place it over the wrong side of the fabric. Matching up that side seam to the inseam of the arm, you'll be able to stitch all the way around. So that sleeve's going to come out and be rolled to the right side. The rest of the shirt has been stitched just as the directions have said, but this has given me a little bit of a longer sleeve. The short one would have come to about here. The long one was too long, and it has a built-in cuff. And the inside is where all those seams are. And so on the outside, it is a nice, clean edge. The original pattern had the long sleeve version and a very short sleeve version. I was able to take that and change it to the length that I wanted and the circumference that I wanted. I added a little cuff so that it looks nice from all sides, all while keeping the original pattern original. That way I'm going to be able to use that pattern for, well, the long sleeve and the very short sleeve. It's a really easy way of changing patterns and keeping the originals, well, original. Thank you for joining me today on Sew Very Easy. Feel free to subscribe, and as always, come on back. Let's see what we're sewing next time in the sewing room. Bye for now.